So,
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to start by sharing my screen again just for a minute. Like I won't do that for most of the time tonight, but I want to show you guys Blue Letter Bible a little bit because I played with that a little bit more this week after I sent out that text. And there's actually some things you can do on there, like between that and Bible Hub, you can kind of do everything. So I'll just show you a couple of the things you can do on there. Hang on. Okay. There we go. All right. So let's say that I start in Bible Hub. This is kind of my workflow here. So I go to Deuteronomy 6:4. And it actually just brought me right to the parallel. You can click on this too, but we talked about this last time. It's got a really good parallel version, so you can see all these different versions here. Okay, so it's really useful for that. And then and then one of two things from there. You can either, oh no, I guess probably what I would do next is go to the interlin here for Deuteronomy 6:4, just like we did last time. And then click on the Strong's number for Shema. Keep having to move you guys. And then this is useful because it's the NASB translation, New American Standard, and it tells how many, how it's translated and how many times in the entire Hebrew Bible. So that's nice. But what happens is, for whatever reason, when you go to where it tells you the occurrences down here, 11,000 or 1160, if there's too many occurrences of the word, and I tried this with Yahweh too, and there's way more occurrences of Yahweh in the Hebrew Bible. Once you scroll down to the bottom, you're not through all of the Bible.
Yeah.
It only goes to 1 Samuel, and I could not figure out how to go any further than that. Like, I don't know if I'm just missing. I tried clicking off this advertisement. I tried clicking on all these things down here. None of them take you where you want to go. So that's unfortunate. It's just something you're going to run into with the concordance on Bible Hub. But the thing is, what I realized was, after I played around with it for a little bit, Blue Letter Bible is actually better for the concordance anyway. Oops. So if I go blueletterbible.org and I type in Deuteronomy, did I spell that right? I don't know. 6:4. So it takes you to the verses, and you can click on this tools thing right here. So again, this is blueletterbible.org. Click on the tools, and then it gives you a bunch of stuff here. And so the starting point is the interlinear. And so then down here under these tabs, you've got all these different choices. So you can do a forward inline, reverse inline. So forward inline, it does it normally because, Hebrew goes right to left. So here, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. But you can also do a reverse inline. So it actually goes in English order, left to right. So that's kind of nice. But then the other tab that's over here is the Septuagint. And so that's kind of nice. But let me show you a couple other things first. So let's say that I'm just looking at the normal inline here. So when I click on here, is that where I can see it? Where was I? No, I guess you'd want to be here in this one. So you've got the word here, and it's got the Strong's word right here. So then I can click on that. And then over here, notice it gives me all the books of the Bible, and it tells me how many times it occurs in each book. So I was able to do some really quick mathematical things with this, because that's fun, doing math with your Bible study. But it's just a lot easier to see from right here. So you can click on any of these, you can get to the references really quickly. And so let's say that I click on Deuteronomy here, and it shows me it's 91 times. So then you see the exact word right here. It's labeled with the Strong's number And so it's just kind of really easy to find it quickly and scroll through, and it shows the entire verse instead of just part of the verse, which the Bible Hub does. So I just like the concordance version here better. So, I mean, you guys can do what you want because either concordance will work. But I just wanted to show you this one because it's kind of nice. And you can actually, you don't even have to click back because I'm down here looking at the Deuteronomy ones, but I just scroll up a little bit and now I'm back to the books of the Bible. And so then you can click on any of them that you want to. So then the other cool thing that's here is if I go to, I scroll down just a little bit. Oh, no, it won't be in here because I'm here. I need to back up one, I think. Well, maybe not. Where are you? Okay, let me back up here from the beginning. I'm not quite as familiar with this one. Okay, so if I click on the Strong's word for here, should be here, I hope. Oh, what in the world? Huh. All of a sudden, the thing that I was looking at earlier is not here. And I don't know why. There was something right here that talked about, it gave you the option of looking in the, see here? No, that's not it. It usually gives you the option of looking in the Septuagint right there. Well, okay, all right. Here's the other way you can get to it. So if I go back to, let's say that I just go back to the home page. Sorry, I don't want to take up all of our time with this because I want to actually discuss this. But if you go to Septuagint right here, then it will actually take you to the Septuagint. Now, here's the problem with this. It's not translated. Okay, so this, unfortunately, you have to do kind of one extra step here, but it's not too hard. If you go back to Bible Hub and you look at the interlinear for Deuteronomy 6:4, you can click on the ABP that I showed you guys last week and then find 6:4 on here, and then it will give you the word. And so it tells you it's 191. Okay. So on the other side, it has either a G or an H in front of it, and that just stands for Greek or Hebrew. But this is the Greek word here. And so then I just need to find 191 in this verse. And there it is. Okay. So then I can click on that and it will take me to, yeah, here it is. This is where you need to go. So then once you go there, it gives you the definition of the Greek word, and it gives you some other stuff there, but then you can view the New Testament results in the TR Greek Concordance. Right now, what it's showing me is the Septuagint. So it's showing me everything in the Old Testament. And again, it's split up by book of the Bible, which is nice. Okay, so I can look at any time that Greek word was used in the Septuagint. But then you can also click and you can say, okay, when was this word used in the New Testament? So I can go to the New Testament concordance, and then it will show me that word in the New Testament as well. Okay. So it's, kind of nice to be able to use that tool. And you can, as you can see, you can kind of do that backwards also. Like if you're working with a Greek word from the New Testament, this would allow you to click on the LXX. So you can go back to the Septuagint and it will show you every time that word is used in the Old Testament as well. So that's like what Tim was doing when he started with a New Testament word, and then he was going back to the Old Testament to see where it was found. So you can do a lot of that stuff on Blue Letter Bible. So the only thing I don't really, I would just use Blue Letter Bible, except for I don't like that Blue Letter Bible is mainly in King James. So it's just older English. The Bible Hub does a better job having things in a New American Standard. And then the other thing is it doesn't have an interlinear Septuagint. So it makes it, if you don't know the Greek words, it makes it a little bit harder to figure out what word it is. But if you just kind of use both of them together, then you can get everything that you need there. Hopefully that made sense. Was that confusing?
I probably just need time to play with it. And
yeah. And like I said, I'm recording all of these, so you can always go back and look at it.
Well, the written instructions that you put in WhatsApp, I was able to use that and get this and navigate this. Do you remember?
Yeah, I don't think you mean navigate the Bible.
Bible, or what is this one? The Blue Letter Bible.
Blue Letter Bible.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean based on what I put in the text thread?
Yeah, in the texts on the WhatsApp.
Yeah, I don't think I said anything about using the Septuagint though, because I didn't actually I didn't know you could do that until I played around with it a little bit more. So anyway, maybe I'll write that up too, like I wrote up the other one, and just put that in the chat as well. I don't think it'll take me too long to come up with a workflow for that, but anyway, it's cool. You can do some cool things with it. So, all right. Having said all that, let me go ahead and stop sharing here. And I just want to hear from you guys as far as what you saw.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people already shared in the chat a little bit, so we can sort of build off of what they said as well if we want to.
Well, I really liked the I think it would be good to do the Blue Letter Bible like you did the Bible Hub, because I just went through that kind of step by step. It really helped me to know, what to do or how to, how to look things up and everything. But anyway.
Yeah, I can go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just say, so when I started, I decided to start just by trying to figure out what my current definition of the word was. And so I did one of those little word clouds like Tim had done. And it was actually really interesting to think about oh, this has a lot of meanings. We use this word a lot of different ways just in English. And then I kind of tried to figure out which of these words do I think, did I originally think the Bible was using it as? And I guess I always kind of assumed that in this context, it was a call to attention, here, I hope you hear that, they're trying to grasp your attention. But as I started looking at other places in the Bible, I kind of shifted, and I feel it more so is maybe a call to understand, they're asking you to hear and understand. They want you to actually respond or do something, is what I think the author was trying to get at. So I definitely had a little bit of a mind shift. Not so much just hey, pay attention, but hey, I want you to understand what I'm about to say and actually respond or do something with it. So it was kind of interesting just to think about maybe the way that word was trying to be used as opposed to what I assumed it was.
Mm-hmm. And could you talk us through what was your sort of process as far as just looking at that word and how it's used in other places?
That's a great question, because I was clicking lots of things, so I don't even know exactly what I did.
Okay, I didn't know if there was something systematic, or if it was just I'm just gonna look at this one, then this one, then this one.
I kind of started by just looking through all the different ways it was used, and there was a place where it listed all the words, and it was how many times it was used in that way, and kind of looked at all the different ones that there were, which then it kind of made me think even more about that word cloud of oh, this could also mean this, or I think the word obey was on there, and just different things like that. So that got me thinking a little bit more. And then I would kind of click into those occurrences and think about, how they were being used and where. And then at the end, I ended up going through looking at the video from, gosh, why am I blanking on the name?
Bible Project.
Immaculate Bible Project.
Thank you. My brain is done, you guys. So then I watched their video, which was actually really helpful and kind of affirmed what I had kind of thought. Like some of the things that I'd come up with, I was like, oh, this is what they're saying. So yeah, it was interesting, but I just tried to look at lots of different places, especially when I saw one that was like different, I would go and like look further at that context specifically. I don't know that I got to go as deep as I would have liked, because yeah, like I had a hard time finding it like where it would correspond in the New Testament. Like I really wanted to see how Jesus would use that. And I found one place where it just said that Jesus would use this word a lot to start his parables, which I thought was interesting, especially since parables were kind of like Jesus' way of like putting things into our terms so we would understand. So I feel like that also helped me kind of lead to that definition of like, maybe this word means like, understand this. I want you to understand this. So that was, I guess, kind of my process. It was a little all over the place though, I'll be honest.
That's okay. It's hard not to be with some of the tools that we have available to us. But no, that's good. Sounds like you were definitely on the right track. And I'm just realizing after you said it, I totally forgot to watch the Shema video. So I need to go do that. Yeah, because I don't remember exactly what Tim emphasized. I got very excited about just the rabbit holes I was falling down. Forgot to watch the video.
Yes, I want to hear what you all found and figured out, because I feel like maybe it will help me to like tune in a little bit more.
How about you, Beth? You get anything out
Well,
of it?
you know, I just started out with what did I think the word hear means, and it was, you know, very literally sound waves on your eardrums, you know, but I know I use it in other ways besides that. Yeah, as I was studying through it or looking through it, it just seemed like in the scriptures, it's often, or probably the majority of the time, talking about a lot more than just hearing something, but in a much, like you said, not even just paying attention, but following through with what is being said. And so I thought, you know, obedience would be like the next step after hearing, listening, obeying. But I just thought it was so interesting. I was looking through the NASB translation and just how many times it said for different words, and it was a little overwhelming that there are so many verses, you know, that I couldn't begin to read them all. But
yeah,
so I was scrolling through and I was kind of looking for the ones that had more to do with or that were translated, listen or obey, just to see how many of those there were, because so much of the time it was hear or heard.
Yep.
And I tried to look at, you know, a few in the Tanakh and a few in the Greek, but it seemed to me that as I was looking through all of it, that was the main idea that I was getting about the word, was that you were listening attentively in order to respond. So that's kind of what the conclusion I came, like you already said, Christina, it was about the same thing.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's awesome. Again, you guys are finding much of what I feel like the first 3 times I did it, every time it just took on a deeper meaning for me. When I first would read that word, I would literally hear it as a passive word instead of an active word. It was like, okay, yeah, here, okay, I need to pay attention. But then it was like both of you said, there's like it becomes an active word. It becomes something where I'm not just hearing, but I'm doing it. So don't just hear it, don't discard it, but show me that you heard it. Show me that you're going to be able to follow through with what you just heard, you know? So yeah, for me, I think the biggest takeaway that I've gotten from this, other than what you guys said, which was brilliant, by the way, is just, again, there's an active part to this, that if we don't know to look for that, we have missed a huge piece of this puzzle. Like there's a calling that he is calling out to us, and he's saying, I want you to fill in the blank. And we have a choice. We can be passive about it. We can hear it and do nothing, or we can understand it, as one of you said, Christine, I think, and you can follow through with it and actually make it an active part of your daily activity. So anyway, that, I think both of you hit the nail on the head. I love both of your feedback and very much feel the same way.
It reminds me a lot of, oh, sorry, Beth.
No, go ahead.
Like when I was reading, like looking through all of this, it made me think about like when you tell a child, like, do you hear me? Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, obviously you're not asking them, like, are your ears perceiving this words coming out of their mouth? Like you're asking, like, do you understand what I'm telling you to do? Like, are you going to do what I'm asking you to do? And that's what I kept coming back to, is I think like it was more of this call of like, I want you to get what I'm saying and do something with it, not just like, you know, I guess when I always read, I always thought of them being like, hear ye, like, pay attention. So it's like, definitely not what they're saying. So yeah, that's kind of like that passive versus like the active piece of it, I think.
Yeah. Perfect example. Yeah. Do you feel like it has changed, or, and I know we haven't done this for very long, but do you feel like as you're seeing this in a different way, or do you feel like any of you feel like words in general are taking on a new meaning for you in your daily life? I mean, like we did the study before and it touched on some of that, but do you guys think about that at all?
I'm not sure. Maybe I haven't got that far in the application process.
Sure.
Still in the.
I feel like it does, but more like in the context of when I'm reading my Bible. Like I'm definitely questioning more, but mostly in that context, probably not in like my everyday language, which maybe I should be. But yeah, I definitely like have pondered more like when I'm reading the Bible, like, I wonder what that means. Or like, so it's definitely like at least getting my mind to think that way, which I feel like is a good first step.
Absolutely. And there, I wasn't saying it that you should. I was just curious. But just a self-observation for me is it has, as I've read the Bible in those terms, it makes me think about the differences with people's understanding, background, how they grew up. And so when I say certain things or I use certain words with someone, it helps me to take pause and to try to think of the context in which the conversation started, where their day has been before I got to them. And maybe they're saying something out, they heard something I said and mistook it because of the context in which they just came from. So for me, it has definitely began to shape me in a different way, just in my everyday language, not necessarily make it more important than or a have to thing. But I was just more curious than anything if you guys had felt that way at all. But
that's a great point, though. I mean, it's such a good practice if we can learn how to understand what this ancient culture meant by words, then I should be able to understand my wife. You would think, and also just remember, like, she may not be using that word the same way that I'm using that word. What does she mean by that word? So yeah, I think now that you have brought that up, Joseph, I'm going to be paying attention to that.
Yeah, that's good.
What about you, Nathan? What's your takeaway?
I fell down some rabbit holes, which was fun. It was a lot of fun, actually. But I don't know, my brain goes to math sometimes. Let me see. So I figured out and you can see this pretty easily in the Blue Letter Bible. It's translated, Shema occurs 91 times in Deuteronomy. So I kind of started in Deuteronomy because I wanted to know like what's going on there first. And that word is used a lot in Deuteronomy. And so actually, I did some quick figuring, and 8% of the occurrences of Shema happen in Deuteronomy out of the entire Hebrew Bible, 8%. And so then I went and I counted, like, how many pages does Deuteronomy take up in my Bible compared to how many pages there are in the Hebrew Bible. And you would only expect there to be about 4% of the occurrences in Deuteronomy, just based on page volume. So what that's telling me is, like, this word here is really, really important in Deuteronomy. Like, it actually seems like it's a theme in the book, is here, here, here. He's just saying it over and over again, like twice as much as normal. Basically, that word gets said in Deuteronomy. So that's kind of cool that you can just see a word and it will clue you into, this is probably a theme of this book. So that was cool. Another thing that I saw was 18 times in the New American Standard, out of those 91, Shema gets translated obey, which is about 20% of the uses. And the rest of the Old Testament, Shema is translated obey about 7% of the time. So again, like, it's way ramped up, that word in Deuteronomy. And even when it's not translated obey, a lot of times hear and do are like right next to each other in the verse, right? So it's like these things are linked. And so it was cool to see that. I just like the statistics. But the thing that I did see, and call you Beth on here. You pointed this out in the chat, and I had been seeing the same thing. What surprised me was how many times the word was used for God. And it almost seems like a lot of the times when it's used in Deuteronomy of God, it's also talking about not just God listening to what we're saying, but acting because of it. Right. And so it's almost like the word gets used the same for God as it gets used for us, which is really interesting and really cool, that when God speaks to us, we are called to listen and do something. And when God hears us, when God's listening to us, there's also the expectation that he's going to do something about it. You know, so when you think about, like, in Exodus, God says, I heard the cry of the Israelites in slavery. And what that means is, I'm about to do something, you know, I heard and I'm going to do. And that's, Beth, when you were talking about the Psalms, it's the same thing. Like, these people aren't crying out to God, like, hear me with your ears. They're like, no, hear means do something. Why aren't you doing something? You know, a lot of those are in lament Psalms where they're crying out to God to act on our behalf. And so it becomes like, and then this just hit me thinking about where Deuteronomy is situated in the Torah. You know, it's like the summary of the law, essentially, which is that covenant between God and Israel. And so if that's the summary, then it's talking about how this is what a covenant is. A covenant is, you listen to me and do what I have commanded you to do, and I will listen to you, and I will work for your good. And it's like this reciprocal thing where each is hearing the other. And it's just so cool. It becomes this covenantal word that just took on some more meaning to me. So I don't know. I think that's really cool that it works both ways. And so you can see that in a lot of the Hebrew Bible if you go through it as well. There are times when God is calling us to hear him, and there are a lot of times also when the humans are calling God to hear them and act on their behalf. So I don't know. I just found that to be really, really cool. The other thing I found from the Septuagint, and so this is kind of some of the stuff you can do with the Blue Letter Bible, because I was playing around with that a little bit. I found that there are some other words besides, so the main Greek word is akuo, I think. Oh, someone's coming in.
Hey, you guys are there.
How's it going? Yeah, we're still talking. I'm being long-winded. We were talking about the Greek word for Shema in Deuteronomy 6:4. So, well, before I do that, do you want to? I know you shared a little bit in the chat about what you saw there as far as the link between hearing and like paying attention or obeying or that sort of thing. Do you want to talk any more about what you saw? I'm putting you on the spot right after you got in here.
So you're talking to me?
I am talking to you, Kurt.
Are you talking to me?
Well, I just made it to Dallas, and
Oh, okay.
so yeah, I don't know where the wife's. I was wondering if the wife remembered this. Like, evidently not. I was gonna say we're gonna be on two different screens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think the biggest thing I got out of it was, is when you hear. I mean, you can tell when somebody's hearing by the way they act from it. So it's not only just, like they pointed out on that little video or whatever, there's an action behind just the mental thing. And I thought that was very enlightening.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree.
That was my big thought.
So what we were talking about right before you got on, and I went over this in the video, so you could always go back and watch this later, but there's another website called Blue Letter Bible, and it's actually a little bit better for the Septuagint as far as using the Greek, finding what the Greek word is, and then being able to look it up and see how it's used in the New Testament as well. So the word that's used there is akuo. I think I'm saying it right. And that word, it seems like, as I looked at the way that it was used throughout the Hebrew Bible, so every time that Shema is used in Deuteronomy, akuo is not necessarily used. In fact, akuo was almost never, I don't think it was ever used for the times when it was translated obey, which is interesting. So akuo, I think, is more of just a Greek word that means to, like, anatomically, you're getting words, like you're hearing things. And so it's interesting to see how like in the Shema, how that really may have just been the way that they were understanding that word when they translated it. This is like, okay, this is like hey, hear me, listen to what I'm about to say, And but there are some other times when Shema is translated obey, and then that word in the Greek in the Greek Old Testament, it gets hypakuo. No, hupakuo. I'm not pronouncing that right. Yeah, hupakuo, I think is what it is, which is interesting. It's just a kuo with an HYP on the front of it. And so it's the same Greek root. It just has a different prefix, but that's the one that gets translated pretty much every time that it's translated obey in Deuteronomy. That's the word. It's hupakuo. And so that's really interesting. So I went through the New Testament to see the uses of akuo, the uses of hupakuo, and it's kind of the same in the New Testament, where hupakuo is used anytime that it's like just straight obey is the word. But akuo, there are several times in the New Testament when the New Testament authors kind of use akuo as more of like a hear and do sort of thing. And so I think that's interesting because it shows me what Tim was talking about, that these New Testament authors, they were writing in Greek, but they were thinking a lot of times in Hebrew. And so a lot of them probably had Shema on the brain. And if Shema is a word that means hear and do, then they're almost using akuo kind of in that same way. So it's really fascinating because you can start to see, like, get into the brains of those New Testament writers and see, okay, so they're using this word akuo, but maybe they're not using it exactly the way that it typically got used in Greek. Maybe they are thinking of this word more as like an action word. So I don't know. That was just fascinating to me to see that. And that was kind of across the board as far as like the way that Jesus was using it and even the way that Paul used it. so it's kind of fun if you have a chance to do the Blue Letter Bible thing to look at how that word gets used in the New Testament, because it can. I've been surprised how much this has helped me just understand how Jewish the New Testament writers were. And I've been reading some, Joseph, I know you have too, reading a couple of N.T. Wright books lately.
Mhm.
And it's just so, like, he's so good at explaining the New Testament in terms of the Jewishness of, I know Brennan recommended that Paul book.
Yeah. It's a long one.
It's like 16 hours as an audiobook.
Yep, I looked at it. That's all I did.
But I listened to the whole thing, and it's so good, because it really, like, so many times I think we take Paul and we think of him in very Greek terms, because he's a good writer, he's good at arguments and stuff like that, but his arguments are so Jewish and we just don't even realize it, you know.
Can you put a link to that in the chat?
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
try.
I'm driving around Texas, and there's a lot of free time in the car.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's actually really, really cool. It's basically a biography of Paul, and there were some big surprises in there for me, like just things that I hadn't thought about before that he's sort of pieced together based on Paul's letters and the book of Acts and all that stuff. So it's a fun historical work also. So yeah, I'll try and remember to put that in the chat. But anyway, I guess the point is just that these New Testament authors, they were very, very Jewish, and they just thought in terms of their Hebrew Bible, and they thought in Hebrew, they were writing in Greek. It's so cool to be able to sort of peel that world back and see it a little bit more. So I don't know. Sorry, that was a ramble. What other thoughts do you guys have?
No, that's really helpful. I think it's important to sometimes, and we've talked about this before, but just as a reminder for me as we're talking, to remind me that these texts didn't exist before they were written. I mean, we look at the Bible as a whole, and sometimes our brains just think of it as a whole without putting it in the right timeline and realizing that as these writers, Paul included, was a brilliant writer, and many of the writers were, but they obviously were working from something. They had a starting point, and where did they learn it from? How did they grow up? What was the household they grew up in? All of that plays a huge part in how they're going to understand and try to convey their message and who they're conveying to. So it is a good reminder to remember that, again, we look at it as, we could see it as a whole, and then we work backwards, but instead trying to jump back into that moment in time in history and then ask ourselves the question: who were they writing to? Why were they writing this? What was written before this? That, like, again, the Shema, I think, is what jumps out to me even more just about the whole Shema, is that before that was written, maybe it wasn't really said before, and so now it's said, and now, okay, what for those people who are first hearing it, what did we do with this? How did we respond to this? And it's hard to peel back the layers and to put myself back in that time frame, because again, I read it, oh, that's cool, how does it apply to me today, Midwestern, society, and my home that they didn't have back then, all these different contexts, confirmation biases I put onto it, and then, but again, to look at it from the time frame, the context in which it was written, who it was written to, and then how can this lesson, how can these words still impact me today in the way that God intended for those original people. So anyway, that is a deep rabbit hole for me that my brain tends to do, is to just keep peeling back layers, and eventually I'm like, where did I start? What was I doing? But anyway.
Yeah, I think my big takeaway for me personally is just going to be, it just surprised me so much that Shema, O Israel, is one half of the equation. And then if you go to the Psalms, Shema, O God, is like the other half of the equation, you know? So we've got God saying, Shema, O Israel. And then Israel is saying back to God, Shema, O God, help us, you know, act on our behalf. It's just so cool. The reciprocity there. It's this covenantal relationship is what it was always meant to be. So that's cool for me. I might even start my prayers that way this week.
I was
Good
thinking
idea.
the same thing. I was like, it'd be cool to pray that way. Like, you know, it's interesting. I like that connection too. I didn't like get that far, I don't feel like. So that I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah, that was, I don't know. I feel like there's always something, you know, when we jump in, there's always something that surprises me, which I love.
I also like what you were saying about it being almost like a theme of Deuteronomy. That was kind of a cool way to approach it. And I'm not a mathematician. Math is not the strongest subject, but that was kind of a cool way to like look at that and really think about, you know, the theme of that book and what is it trying to say to us. That was kind of cool. Why you had wise words.
Any other thoughts?
I don't think so. I think everybody's shared all their thoughts on this so far.
That's great.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why do you think they call it? I guess we call it the Shema. Is that what the Jewish people called it? Like in The Chosen, that's what Jesus calls it, the Shema.
Yeah.
Why would they say the here, you know?
I don't know. I don't know. Joseph, do you have any insight on that?
I don't know if I have, you know, a factual insight on it, but it is interesting to know that the Shema was a centerpiece to the Jewish people back then. In fact, they had when you read in the scriptures that they tie it to their hands and their forehead, they literally tied this verse to their hands and their forehead in these little boxes. I think they're called phylacteries or something like that. Yeah, which was super, super cool. And that's a deep rabbit hole we can go down, which is really fun. But anyway, you know, when they would carry this, you know, in boxes, like literally to remind them when they do the work of their hands, this is what they're doing it for. When they're having thoughts, this is what they're supposed to be putting their thoughts on. So I don't know why they called it that specifically, or if it was something that just was, that's what they called it back then. But I think I think it definitely points to the importance of the word and what a big word it is. It isn't just simply, okay, I heard it. You know, I think I think that in and of itself lends us to this idea that there's a greater weight to what's being said here than just hearing it.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was wondering, if it was just to emphasize that word. Well,
Great question, though.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder, like, with, you know, when you were talking about it being very covenantal, maybe it was like a way to remember the covenant. I could be wrong.
Absolutely.
Processing slowly over here.
I think you're absolutely right that was supposed to be on their minds all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, that like covenant. So if it kind of leans to that, makes me wonder. Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting question.
Yeah, you're right. And the whole Shema is covenantal, because I don't know if we talked about this a little bit last week, but probably the better translation, instead of the Lord our God, the Lord is one, is more like the Lord our God, he is the only God for you. Right. So that has that covenantal feel to it as well. Like, this is your God and you are his people, and you're doing this thing together, you know? So yeah, so I think you're right on with that.
Well, should we wrap it up there, Nathan?
Yeah,
What
I
do you
think so. So our word for next week,
Yahweh, I
Yahweh?
think is next.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these first two are the most overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because yeah, Yahweh is used even more times in the Hebrew Bible than than Shema was. So, you know, do what you can there. I don't know that there will be as much value in looking specifically at one book of the Bible for this one. I think Yahweh is kind of used the same throughout the Torah. It might be interesting to look at, you know, is it used differently in the Torah than it is in the prophets, than it is in the writings? But one thing, if you're interested in a deep rabbit hole, Joseph and I were talking about this the day that we got together. The difference between Yahweh and Elohim is pretty fascinating. And so anyway, that could be, you know, if you get done with all the Yahweh words and you're bored, because, you know, because you did that in day 2 or something, then you could always go back and look at the uses of Elohim. But that's kind of a fun little distinction to make.
And I think the video for this one, as I recall it, is really insightful. So some of this you might already know. Pastor Greg does, and actually the whole crossing team does a great job of breaking these words down and giving you a little historical context. But for me, this video is extremely, it's short, but it's packed full of a lot of information. So I find it extremely, just from a knowledge standpoint, to kind of better understand what the word means and how it kind of plays into that culture. So anyway.
Yeah, I might have to start with a video on that one. That's like that's a big word to tackle.
Yeah, this might be a good one to do that on, because then that will sort of help direct what you're looking for and that sort of thing. And that's, you know, with the word that's used this many times, that can be super overwhelming. So that might be good advice this week.
Well, hopefully I have something insightful to say next week. Hopefully I find something. If I can just find a tidbit, I'm happy. So
You found something this week. It was great.
Yeah.
it was a good start. So it's interesting though. I think the more you dig and the more time you devote to this, the more you get out of it. It's really like whatever you're going to put in is what you're going to get out.
Yeah, I found it to be pretty rewarding so far. So
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, is, you know, it's like you read any Bible verse throughout your life and it means something different to you as your life progresses or whatever, or you know, the circumstances that you're going through. And then to add this into it, then that just brings out even more to a verse when you read it. So that's what I like about all this nerdiness of the Bible.
me too. And yeah, and along those lines, Kurt, I have found some applications in the Hebrew Bible that I had never noticed before. You know, just seeing some of the themes that you start to see when this opens up. It's cool because there's some application in places that I just wouldn't have expected. You know, because when you understand what it meant in the original context, then it sometimes it almost translates itself into our context once you know that.
Right.
So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, that Bible's a cool book.
Yes, it is. All right, well, I'll let you guys go. Thanks for coming and sharing everything that you had to share. And I guess we'll just plan on doing this next week also. And again, you know, if you ever can't make it, that's totally fine. We'll be recording it. But anytime you can, it's great because then we can have conversations like this. So.
Well, I'm glad you guys were all still going.
What's that?
I'm glad you guys were all still going when I looked at the clock and it was like, oh no.
Yeah. And I will put the workflow for the Blue Letter Bible. I'll try to do that either tonight or tomorrow morning, so that you guys will have the instructions on how to use the Septuagint part of that as well. So.
And the Paul book on audio.
Paul book. I gotta remember. Yes, thank you for the reminder. I would have forgotten that. I'll try.
I have to drive to Houston tomorrow, and I'll be driving back on Thursday, and then driving back home on Friday. So.
I have made that drive many, many times because we used to live in Dallas. So I sympathize totally. with the amount of driving you have to do. So yeah, I'll do that as soon as we get off the call, so that you have something to read in the car. Or
There you go. Listen to, yeah.
Listen to, don't read it.
Yeah, be like. All
right.
right.
Well, y'all have a good rest of your weekend.
Yeah.
Thanks, you
Thanks.
too.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
See ya.